What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celio's Network. This is the Richmond Regionals discussion. This is the first expanded format major tournament of the season, and we have two and a half new sets since the last expanded major. Um, so should be pretty exciting. A lot of new stuff to see and a lot of old decks that are getting revitalized. I have three guests with me today: Kiernan, Wagner, Christian Franco, and Alex Shemansky. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves? We'll go Kiernan, Christian, Franco, and just tell us a little about how long you've been playing, maybe some accomplishments if you have a team or anything like that.
What up? I'm Kiernan. I'm from Des Moines, Iowa. I've been playing since cities of 2015. Although increasingly kind of less at Masters, just because I haven't really had as much time to play as when I was younger. But I've gotten two Worlds invites and done not much else. But I've been playing a lot lately, so here I am.
Word.
Uh, I'm Christian. This is my third year playing, and I've gotten my invite both years. But other than that, I've only had like three notable accomplishments. I've lost my win in on like every single expanded regionals except for one where I somehow made day two. And yeah,
Word.
Uh, I'm Alex. I've been playing 10 years. I have 8 invites. I'm a writer for 6 prizes, and yeah.
Oh yeah, at PokeStats, by the way.
Kiernan's in Pokestats gang. All right, great. So a lot of decks to talk about. This is going to be a little less of an insightful meta discussion, at least from my end. I'm mostly just going to be bringing up archetypes and maybe a couple variants for some of the archetypes and asking my guests what they think about them as far as if they're going to be popular or if they're going to be viable or if they're going to be both. For Richmond Regionals, there's a lot to talk about. There's so many sets and so many cards and expanded. This list is in no specific order. We'll just start with Rayquaza Gx. It did win the last expanded tournament that we had, which was Hartford. Jose Marrero won with Rayquaza. Alex, what do you think about Rayquaza? Do you think it was good then, and how do you think it is now? Popular, viable?
I don't think it'll be popular. I don't think it's overly viable, but I think with the right list, you could go far and the right matchups.
Okay, cool. Is there like, if you have you worked with Rayquaza at all going into Richmond?
Sort of. I've played an Exodia Rayquaza for, yeah, it wasn't great.
Okay. Christian, any thoughts?
uh, I think it's an inferior Turbo Dark, and also it kind of mills itself against a lot of the control decks.
Okay,
That's
Kieran.
Yeah, it kind of like it's really fair now. I feel like, which is kind of weird to say considering it's Rayquaza, but just like no matter what route you take the deck with, like Alex was talking about, like Exodia, there's like better ways to Exodia someone. And in terms of just like raw damage, like there are so many broken things that can just do a bunch of damage. And Rayquaza honestly just kind of seems like one of the more like fair ways to do that.
Okay, sounds pretty reasonable. Next on my list is Trevenant. We'll go Kieran first for Trevenant.
I've built it. I've played like 3 games with it. I'm pretty resigned to not playing it myself because it's Trevenant. But like every time it goes away, man, like there's always just that one guy that just like brings Trevenant back, who's like, oh, let's just put like a bunch of counter catchers in Trevenant. And like now they're like new toys. Like you can like throw power plants in there if you wanted to do something fancy to try to beat Turbo Dark. I definitely haven't played enough to like reasonably say it's even capable of beating Turbo Dark, but I feel like if you could build a list that was capable of beating Turbo Dark, like it's a fair deck. I mean, not fair, in the sense like it's fair to play against, but like fair.
Yeah.
Christian.
I don't know. I think Trevenant's like it's okay. I don't think it's good enough to like beat a lot of the explosiveness in this format. And I mean, like, yo, you start a Greninja Zoroark, attach your go, attach it again. I won the game. Like, I don't know. That's kind of strong, but like, I don't think Trevenant's better than like I don't think it's capable of beating a lot of the meta right now.
Alex, anything different to say?
No, I pretty much agree with that. Like,
Alright.
it's just bad.
Then we'll go to Alex to start with Shocklock. I think Jonathan Croxton just put out an article more looking at Zoroark decks, but he also talked a little bit about Shocklock. And it looks like he's not too hot on the deck, and he was kind of the notable Shocklocker. So what do you think about the deck?
Yeah, I don't think it's viable anymore just because of Stealthy Hood. Like, if you attach a Stealthy Hood, you are immune to Shocklock.
Yeah, Shocklock.
It just
Stealthy Hood's
doesn't
really good. Christian or Kieran, do you think Shocklock can survive?
No.
Okay, then we'll just go on to the next one, which is Zurich Garbodor, and I have Zoroark with Parallel and Zoroark with Skyfield listed. Since DDG and their testing squad brought the Parallel version that was like kind of built to beat the Mirror last year at Hartford. Christian, what do you think about Zoroark Garb in general, and do you have a preference on the Parallel slightly control-ish build or just the Skyfield and try to do more damage?
I think Zoroark is actually kind of strong right now, because just the fact that Garbotoxin is a thing, and you can also evolve it with Trash Lynch, like both of those cards are extremely strong right now, considering how like hyped up Mew Mew and Archies are right now. And I don't know, I think like I prefer the Zoro Skyfield one because I like having the explosiveness of it and having more bench space, because you do have to dig a lot in the deck to actually get what you need to do.
Cool. Alex?
I prefer the Zoro Skyfield version just because the Parallel feels kind of limited against the tag team decks.
Mm-hmm.
I would just prefer to have explosive damage and not lose when I can't.
Yeah. No, I feel that, because Parallel doesn't hurt as many decks as it might have used to. Or even if it just hurt Zoroark decks in the past, that was a large chunk of the meta. Do you think there's any merit to bodybuilding dumbbells to make your Zoroark tankier?
I don't think it's worth it at this point.
Okay, cool.
If you got the lock, you got the lock.
Yeah.
Cool.
Kieran?
I don't know. I kind of like the Parallel build, the one that like it can just play a little bit more like a control deck, and that's kind of, a lot of the time being able to shift gears like that is just strong. But I mean, also I for one I don't see myself playing Zoroark for this event. Like, I think it types well. Like, I think Trash Lynch and Garbotoxin are both really good cards. I could see myself playing Garbodor for this event, which I guess, might eventually end up meaning that I'm playing Zoroark for this event. But, I think the factor in the deck that's making it such a strong play at this point is the fact that it's taking advantage of Garbodor.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm just not, at this point, I feel like Zoroark is just kind of outclassed, and like what's making that deck compete is the fact that you can Trash Lynch Mew Mew for a lot of damage, and also Garbage.
Okay. Alex, do you think Zoroark Garb has the potential to be popular? It definitely, looking back at last year's regional, Zoroark Garb was one of the top decks being tested or tested against, or meta calling that it would be a popular deck. And it feels like that might have changed a bit because we have so many different archetypes now.
Sure. I think Zoroark Garb is actually still going to be kind of big. Like, it's expanded, so nothing is going to be huge.
Mm-hmm.
But Zoroark Garb is definitely a comfort pick for a lot of people that isn't a control deck.
Makes sense. Any last things to say about Zoroark Garb?
I don't know. A lot of people have Zoroark Garb stuff on them, so I don't know. It's always been like a comfort pick for a lot of people, so I mean, why not here?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's like the best play you can make, but it's certainly like far from the worst. So like,
that's a good way to put it.
And it expanded, like, just with how huge the card pool is, like, comfort is important. And some people pilot Zoroark decks very well, and that's, if they can do that, all the power to them. Play Zoroark Garb.
Yeah, there could be a lot of factors going into people playing it.
Yeah.
Next is Pikarom. I personally don't see any way that Pikarom becomes a good play for this tournament. But I'll go ahead, Franco.
I don't have any words on Pikarom.
Okay.
It's not a good deck.
Okay. Alex.
If you want to play Pikarom, go play Turbo Dark instead, please. Thanks.
Cool. We'll leave it at that. I'll put these two into the same category since they're fairly similar. Hitmonwob and Buzzwole Garbodor. Obviously the non-GX Buzzwole and Garbodor. Anything on Hitmonwob and Buzzwole Garbodor, Kiernan?
I'm really hesitant to call either a good play because it's like they have fun toys. You can do really cool things with them. Like Karina just enables some cool like options and cool ways to play the deck. And like I was messing around with Hitmonwob, like with Dimension Valleys and like using Psychic Assault. And it was a neat deck, and it beat what it was supposed to beat, and it literally never ever beat what it wasn't supposed to beat. It's just a great kind of deck, and I feel like Buzzgarb is like kind of the same way, maybe to a slightly less extent because Buzzgarb is. I mean, it's a little bit more linear what it's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I guess its lines of play can be more linear, and generally when I'm speaking about decks that they aren't supposed to beat, that's just like a deck that can, control the pace of the game better than they can, or a deck that can like still pop off against them despite them controlling the pace of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think it definitely has some really good matchups that it can reap. It's just one of those decks like, why aren't you just picking something better?
Okay. I could see Buzzwole Garbodor getting play. We were talking about Garbodor just being really strong now. And then if you're just playing a heavy amount of Baby Buzz with Deances and Strong Energies, Turbo Dark looks like it's going to be everywhere. So like that just kind of seems really good. Alex, any thoughts on either of these single prizer decks?
I would lean towards Buzzguard being better overall, just because the Garbotoxin N is kind of broken. I also don't. I've never liked Hitmonwob. It just seems kind of bad to me. But I don't think either are going to be very played.
Franco, any opposing thoughts?
Buzzgarb is better, but I think the more aggressive approach of Hitmonwob is also really strong, just because Wobbuffet's a card in the deck. But I don't know. They seem to both have like fairly similar matchup spreads, but also ones that aren't like favorable enough to get you far in a tournament.
Yeah, I think Turbo Dark is the big reason people might want to play the deck. Like last year, Pikarom was a big reason to want to play Hitmonwob, and I can see Turbo Dark kind of being the reason to play Buzzwole Garbodor this year. I'm just going to skip ahead to Turbo Dark since we're talking about it now. Franco, about how popular do you think Turbo Dark can be?
It could be upwards of maybe the most popular deck in the room, just because of how easy people think it will be to play when it really isn't, because there's a lot of important sequencing. But I think it's going to be extremely popular just because it's just a strong deck, probably one of the strongest of the non-Zoro or control-based decks.
Yeah, I think it definitely has a lower skill floor. I think we can probably agree on that. Like, you can play it at a satisfactory level.
Yeah, enough to take games.
Yeah. How about you, Alex? What do you think about Turbo Dark?
I think it'll be the most common non-control deck, I think.
Okay. Kiernan, Turbo Dark, do you think it has what it takes to go into top 8 of the tournament? Or do you think it's a safe pick if you don't know what else to play and you want to try to get points?
I would say play Turbo Dark if you're bad. For one thing, I think you have to respect the deck. But to be completely honest, if I sat down across from like I could sit across from someone I've never heard of, or I could sit down across from like Tord, And if it's Turbo Dark, it's like I'm respecting what the deck does and not the player to a certain extent, because there are, certain intricacies as there are in all decks. But I think that Turbo Dark has a very low, like, outplay barrier.
Yeah,
I think
its skill ceiling is low.
Carry you to day 2, but like I think once you're playing against like good players, like the deck becomes significantly worse because it just continues to do the same thing.
Yeah, I was talking about this a lot earlier. The deck has a low skill floor and a low skill ceiling, so you can play at a satisfactory level with minimal to moderate skill, but even if you're the best player in the room, you cannot raise the deck's performance as significantly as you could with maybe something like Sableye Garbodor or Zurich Control. But I still think it's very powerful. Christian, what do you think about the deck's viability going into day 2 of a tournament?
I don't know. If you think that you can beat a control consistently, which you probably can't, then you'll go far, but I don't think you're going to go very far in day 2 with that deck.
Alex, any differing thoughts?
No, I agree with that.
Okay, cool. Next is Archie's. First, Archie's are all Archie's decks now like just customarily playing the 2 Mewtwo and Mew tag teams? Are we expecting any Archie's variants that aren't attacking with Mewtwo as their main attacker?
I mean, like,
Okay. So we'll just assume that it's the cookie cutter list we've been seeing. It plays the 2 Mewtwo, a Kingdra GX and Espeon Deoxys tag team. Some still play the Wailord Magikarp tag team. Some play the Palkia GX. Some play the Volcanion Prism. Alex, what do you think about the deck in terms of how popular it could be and how good of a deck it is?
It'll be popular. It's a good deck, and it's really not worth playing if you have a better. Like, I would not play it if you have anything better. It's so luck based at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not really in control of your games to a certain extent. Kiernan?
Yeah, I'm mostly inclined to agree. I think it allows slightly more outplay options than like Turbo Dark, just because I think like the things that Mewtwo enables are just inherently skill based, just by opening up more options, and you can do some kind of fancy things with it. But like if there's one deck I checked off the list very fast that I'm not playing, it was definitely Archestoise. Like it's just, I feel like it's one of the first decks people think about like being able to handle like in expanded, and like control decks are just so tooled to beat it at this point. It's just like if you're playing Archestoise, I just have so many like whys again.
Mm-hmm. It feels like Archie's is like a very obvious deck, and it's also, I feel like you can play around control decks possibly even less than you can with something like Turbo Dark, because you don't have a choice about putting this your Blastoise with 3 retreat onto the bench, right? I mean, you could not Archie's, but then you're attacking with Mewtwo for minimal damage.
I mean, against Sableye, for example, one thing that Archie's, like I saw, for example, the list that Daniel Altavilla posted, it doesn't play Trash Lance or a way to take prizes.
I saw that too, yeah.
One theoretical out to beating his Sableye list is if you can start Shaman and Archie's without benching things, Sky Return Shaman, and just lone Blastoise, his list loses to that.
Interesting.
Which is like, yeah, like that's a viable option for it. In terms of Espeoxys, which I think is like honestly, I think the reason people are still on Archestoise is because Espeoxys is very good and it takes advantage of Espeoxys the easiest.
Yeah.
But also I would like to inform some of the newer players of a wonderful card called Bent Spoon, Stay Woke Kings.
Yeah, Bent Spoon prevents effects of attacks being done to the Pokemon it's attached to, correct? It's kind of like Stealthy Hood, but for effects of attacks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's nifty. There may not be one in the Sableye Garbodor list I have right now.
Christian, Archie's?
I don't know. I feel like if you're a Zoro player, you can still beat it. You know, Bridget, Orangu, Zorua, they go cross divide away 2 Zoruas, and you're just like, okay, cool, I can just do that again. Your cross divide's useless. I don't know. It's just even when you get Archies out, you can still lose games, and you get Archies out about like 60% of the time on a good day.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, there's definitely going to be someone in the comments saying, no, it's 72%. I've done the math.
No, my deck beats it 100% of the time, and I've played it once. Shut up.
Yeah, there's some Archies diehards. On to the Mewtwo variants. We'll start with Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team with Mega Guardy, with the Quad Distortion Doors, the Lost Boomerang, all of that. I've seen very differing takes on this variant. From this deck feels like one of the best decks in the format to this is literally a free win. Alex, what do you think about Mew Mew Guardy?
Well, I hate. Okay, I really don't like the deck, but I'll acknowledge that it's like strong against decks like Zorogarb. Past
Okay.
that, I just don't know. Like, it's the one I haven't tested much.
Okay, yeah, that's respectable. Christian?
I think it's not that good. The Guardy's like it's a cool gimmick. You put like 30 on the bench. That's sort of strong, I guess. I don't know. The Lost Boomerang's sort of strong, but like I feel like the Zoro deck should be playing Mew to this event. But that's just like personal preference. But I just don't think the deck is that strong. But it can take some games, I suppose.
Kieran?
That makes me the black sheep because this like Mewtwo Guardy is honestly at this point in my top 3. Like I think the deck is insane. I think it's a deck you have to play really carefully, and I think your tech options are going to entirely make or break like whether or not it's a good deck. But they're just like from turn 1 of the game, just depending on what scenarios you're presented with, like you can just do some insane things. I also think the lists that I've seen so far are like way too middle ground. And I think like I'm almost hesitant to call my list Mewtwo Guardy because I'm like distorting as often as I'm, despairing.
Mhm.
And like it's like Flash Ray, Alolan Boomerang is or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Get Lost Boomers or whatever. That
Yeah.
is that card's super good. And with cards like I know like I tweeted about Absol from Roaring Skies like a week ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean honestly, man, everybody thinks they're a gangster until they get quadruple Distortion Door, Giovanni Schemes, 2 more Distortion Door, Absol, and then Lost Boomerang for 3 prizes, and I have done that. Like, moments like those make me go like, that's a deck. Like that's a deck, man. That is a good deck.
That does sound pretty crazy.
It's a lot of moving parts, I will say, but I've been calling it the Infinity Stones because like if you hit like a compressor turn 1, like you're in business. If you hit 2 compressor turn 1, like
yeah, I agree with that.
Whatever you want to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I think at the very least it's strictly better than Mew Plume, which just like I think Mew Plume like just kind of limits its options a little bit more. Like there's just more versatility that comes with Mew Guardy.
Okay.
Also, it's just more consistent. Like that's. I see you shrugging, Alex. And yeah, that's how I feel about Mewtwo Guardy. I say play it.
How popular do you think it will be? It's hard to say like percentage wise since like Alex said like it's hard for a deck to be super popular and expanded. There's like 20 plus archetypes, but do you think it'll be like in the top 5 played decks, like bottom 5 played decks, like somewhere in the middle?
I'd say somewhere in the middle, just because I think it's as far as like between it and Mew Plume, I think Mew Plume's the easier of like one to play. So I think for a player who's not as confident in like their ability to like play the deck perfectly and like pilot the deck well, like Mew Plume's the safer choice. Because like a big thing with with Mewtwo Guardy is like understanding the board position, understanding like because distort really is your main option. You kind of distort, see how they start to stabilize based on that, and you tend to just kind of do whatever you need to do to keep them suppressed. Like that just tends to be how you win with the deck. So, in reality, it's like it operates very similar to Mew Plume, like when you're playing the way that I feel is properly. But I think it enables more options. So I think the top players that would otherwise play Mew Plume will play that. But I think there's a big camp of people who just think it's bad who also would not play Mew Plume. So I'd say it's like definitely sub 5%. But I think anyone who you see playing this deck will either be good or think that they're good at the deck at the very least.
Okay, Alex, we'll go to you. Mew Plume. Do you have any thoughts on that deck?
I think the deck is not good.
Okay.
Like, yes, Item Lock is good. No, Mew Plume is like not the best option.
Christian, Mew Plume.
It's a Mew Plume. It's not the best item lock choice that you can have, because you could just get completely locked out of the game by someone going like, I don't know, Wonder Lock, and then they attach a tool to another Garbodor or something, or just Wonder Lock for one turn and you're already behind. It's just it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
Really store it and like don't be a deck that just doesn't like Mew Plume just doesn't work if you don't get the lock.
Yeah, Distort's better.
At least Guardy's not like that, or basically any Mewtwo deck doesn't distort.
Yeah, Mew Plume, in my opinion, feels like you need a fairly specific setup. I'm not sure that you would be strong against off-meta decks, like just random stuff coming out. Like, your typical round 1 and round 2 at regionals, you can play against anything. That kind of feels like a deck to me that could just kind of falter to the random stuff. Do you think we'll see Mew Plume getting played, though, regardless of our opinions on it, Alex?
Yeah, it'll see play. Easy Item Lock appeals to a lot of people, I think. Like, and it's not incredibly high skill cap either. Like, it's just easy to play. It wins games because Item Lock is pretty dumb. And yeah.
Cool.
Like,
Christian, do you think Mew Plume or Mew Guardy could potentially do well in day 2 or even top 8?
I don't think either of them are good, but I feel like some will day 2 just because item lock is strong and you can brick people off of that enough to make day 2 and maybe sneak into top 8, but I don't know.
Cool. I'll open it up now to any other Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team variants. Does anyone have other Mewtwo and Mew Tag Team variants that they'd like to talk about that they think could be either very good or popular?
I think those are just the two ways to play them. Because, like, honestly, Mewtwo Guardy isn't even Mewtwo Guardy. It's just, like Guardy's just a good option that the deck is able... Like, Despair is just an insane attack. Like, it was, suppressed by being on a Mega Pokemon, and Mega Pokemon suck.
Yeah, I think Mewtwo Guardy is just the Mew box of expanded, at least for now. And Despair is very good because you can clear off your distortion doors and then use them again. So, like, that's like there's kind of like a lot of slots in the deck that are coinciding with the Mega Guardy, which is why I think that's just how the deck became Mew Mega Guardy.
Yeah, I think it's more like the way I've generally been kind of playing the deck is like, I mean, if a better option doesn't present itself to you, that being like an all basic deck that you can immediately just flash ray and them not have an out to, or them like a situation where they only have like 2 Trubbish, so you can just Alolan Marowak and basically win the game immediately. You kind of just like distort and build up damage, with Giratina, and then once you're like at a turn where like maybe their hand's still small because they haven't been able to play cards. Maybe like last turn they didn't even attach an energy. Once you find a place where it's at least semi-safe, or at least you know that like if you Despair Ray, it's still a reach for them to actually stabilize themselves, then you just Despair Ray and then just start piling damage and doing it again. I think it's good. I think it's in top 8.
Cool. So before getting into the next handful of decks, they're all control decks of different kinds. I just want to hear what you think about how do you think the meta will shape up in general? So do you think that Mewtwo is overpowered? Do you think that this turn one handlock Exodia type thing can happen? And if it happens, do you think that is a strong strategy? Christian, just give me some of your general thoughts on how you think the expanded meta is going to look. Aggro, mid-range, control, disruption.
Control is very strong, and this card is going to appear in like 7 out of the 8 of the decks in top 8. It's out of control, or in control.
Good. Alex?
Yeah, control decks are going to be huge. If an aggro deck does figure out how to beat control, then it will go far. But that's pretty hard.
Yeah. Kieran?
Yeah, I think it's good players on good control decks, and they'll just slowly continue to go deeper and deeper as they start to weed out the not so good players that are on aggro decks. I mean, I think some good players will be on aggro decks also.
Yeah,
but
for
I think
sure.
players are wrong. For what it's worth, I think you have to just play something with a control or locking element. Like,
Okay.
it's just like either play like 40 cards or try to prevent your opponent from doing that. And if your deck doesn't do one of those two things, it probably isn't a very good deck.
Cool. So before talking about the archetypes, I feel like the Mewtwo Guardy box that you seem to like, I've done a fair amount of testing with that as well, and I do think that has the ability to just rush down the control decks, since you can Lost Boomerang multiple Zoruas, and then if they prized one Zorua and you lost zone 2, then that they're down to one Zoroark for the game and they can't thin their deck enough. Versus Sableye Garb, same thing. You can get multiple knockouts turn 1 and lost zone important Pokemon. How do you feel, as someone who's tested Mega Guardy Mew a lot, how do you feel going into a control meta?
Well, I've also played a ton of Sableye Garbodor, as I tend to anytime expanded events happen. This was actually like Nick Robinson played against me with this Mewtwo deck, and it's like the sole reason I'm not just like for sure on Sableye Garbodor now, because I think like the deck is very capable of beating like the more control style decks. Like the Lost Boomerang 2 Trubbish thing can sometimes just be like, sometimes they just give you the board where that's just the game ender. And then also just by doing dumb stuff with like Giovanni, Scheme, and Absol, like we made it a possibility to like, you could even get 3 Trubbish out of commission. Like the thing about the deck is like, I'm not gonna like say control decks are like necessarily favored, with the exception of Sableye, because I think, like if they beat your Lost Boomerang, like if they can get lost to your Lost Boomerang, then you just like you're distorting them, and I think anyways that's favored for you. Apart from that, like while it's not necessarily strictly favored against the control decks, it has the outs. Like it's absolutely capable of beating them, and I think that's important, because like a lot of the time with the control decks, like I think the best example of it is like Nationals finals in 2015. You just got to get lucky sometimes. Like that's the best way to beat a control deck, is like ending, praying, and having your prayers answered.
Right. So yeah, well, a lot of matchups with control seem polarizing. I'm not sure the Mega Guardy Mew matchup for Sableye Garb and Zora control are extremely polarizing. I think it could go either way, at least from my testing experience, and it sounds like yours as well. So before we get into the Sableye Garb and Zora Control, which are the true control decks, there's also Zurich Toad, Zurich Seismitoad. And while that deck doesn't put your opponent's hand down to 0 and give them an unplayable card, it does item lock them and Hypnotoxic Laser them and heal your Toad every turn with an Acerola. And those are all pretty good strategies. Christian, what do you think about Zorotoad? Do you think it's outclassed, or do you think Zorotoad still has a spot?
I think it's too slow to survive right now, and can lose to Faba resource. It's not good. It's not the strongest Zoroark deck anymore.
Alex?
Yeah, I think Toad has finally just been like, it's too little at this point.
Okay. Do you think there's merit to a Toad in a Zoroark control deck, or do you just stick to your main strategy?
There probably is merit to it, because there are times when it could just win you the game.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not playing Zero Control. That's just not happening.
Okay.
So I don't test it that much.
Cool.
So I wouldn't know.
Okay. Kieran, Seismitoad EX?
I think the only like existent Seismitoad EX should have in this format is that there's merit to it in Mewtwo over Noivern to some extent, just because it can't be get losted. Like like you bench it and then they don't like
Right.
It's not something to discard how to get losted.
Yeah.
But I definitely don't think Zoro Toad is a deck anymore. Zoro T-Pad is funny. It's fun. You can surge and Pal-Pad and just like do stupid stuff, but like I don't genuinely think it's good. Like it's like you get a few turns where you're like, wow, I'm surging and double flare gunning, or I'm surging and like using Koga and also like following their floatstone, and then you get to the end of the game and it's like, okay, I have like 2 cards left and like 5 prizes and I'm still doing 30 damage with Quaking Punch. Like where am I with this?
Yeah, I tried a Zoro Toad that was based on controlling without the laser bank combo, and that doesn't work because you don't put out enough damage to actually end games.
Yeah.
I do think Zoro Toad with laser bank can at least stay 2. Like I think it has some okay matchups to at least stay 2, but I don't think it can ever beat the other control decks, which we're going to get into now. Alex, I'll start with you. So there's Sableye Garbodor and there's Zoroark Control. Their end games, for anyone who doesn't know, is very similar to the Pidgeotto deck, or at least most players' strategies for these decks are similar to the Pidgeotto deck, where you are stamping double Mars or single Mars depending on their prize cards, and then you chip their top deck, and you just resource manage and control the game from there. So Alex, do you have any thoughts on if Sableye Garb or Zoroark Control is better? Which one might be more popular, and if these kind of high skill decks have the chance to actually be popular?
Sure. Zoro Control will be more popular than Sableye just because it's Zoroark and people like saying trade. It's not necessarily better, but the matchup spread is slightly different, I think. Like, I still don't play control decks, but Zoro Control definitely has the top player effect going on for it. Like, I fully expect to see most of the top players on Zoro Control or Sableye.
Okay. Okay, on to Christian. Do you think one is better than the other? Do you think one will be more popular than the other? Any other thoughts comparing the 2 decks?
I've done the majority of my testing with Zoroark Control, and I think it's better, but I wouldn't know because I haven't played Sableye a whole lot. It seems pretty strong as well. I think Zoroark is obviously going to see a lot more play than Sableye because Zoroark is just a card that everyone just flocks to because it's just such a powerful card. But Zoroark, it's just an extremely strong deck. So
Cool, Kieran. Same kind of questions.
I mean, the only reason I'm not 100% on Sableye is, like, I'm not extremely confident in my ability to play it completely flawlessly. Like, I know the deck well, but I don't... Like, fatigue affects someone in a tournament. Like, I think if there was a computer that played Sableye to a regionals, or a robot, Alex's brother, maybe, who played Sableye to a regionals, like they would just like straight 14-0. I think it is by far the best deck that exists and expanded with the tools available to it right now. But like I think the player playing it has to have the utmost level of respect for the deck the whole time, because the deck is only as good as you are.
Mm-hmm.
The deck enables so many options, and there are so many like ways you can play the deck. But like, I mean, so many lists that I've seen so far are just like super, super generic. They're just like, okay, I'll Garbotoxin them, I'll end them, and I'll start like crushing, hammering them. But like, I mean, you can just like you can just like there are so many ways to just make your opponent completely unable to play the game and put yourself in a complete checkmate position. And I think the Sableye list that does, I think there will be like 1 or 2 Sableyes that go insanely deep, and I think you'll be able to tell how much they played the deck when their list has like 22 one-ofs and they use every single one of them over the course of the tournament.
Yeah,
I
those
think
are
the
some
deck,
good points.
it's if I can play the deck enough to feel confident enough in it, I think it's for sure the best choice.
And do you think, since we're saying that control is, well, I'll actually pose this question for everyone. So, control decks, a lot of times going into our metas, control decks are strong when we don't know a week and a half ahead of time, like we're talking tonight, that control decks are the best thing in the format. Like, usually control decks pop up a few days before the tournament, or you get handed the deck the night before from a player better than you, but like we know this far out that control decks are insanely good. So does that mean that control decks are actually going to be this popular force at the tournament? And is there a way to build decks that just counter control decks? Because what the top player wants to do is counter what's going to be the most played, what's going to be populated, and what's going to be in day 2. And it sounds like a lot of, like, the 3 of you here tonight, myself and everyone I talk to, everyone thinks that day 2 is just going to be Control City. So, Christian, what exactly happens in this scenario where we know Control is the best and we don't know what else to do but play it?
Better control player wins.
Better Control player wins? Okay, sounds about that sounds about the best answer. Alex?
So last year at the end of the expanded, we knew control was broken, and it still came back and it still did well. We know it's broken now. It's still gonna do well now. Like, not everyone can even beat control. Like, no matter what they're playing, they will play into control sometimes. So like, I just think the better player is going to in day 2. The better player wins the control mirror. Like,
right. Okay. Yeah.
at that point, just practice.
Kiernan.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of things are going to happen in Richmond and Portland. Not a whole lot of them are going to be fun, but a lot of them are going to half of the table from playing their games. Like, I mean, you like in Japan, like it was obvious all of those cards were going to be broken, and like you can try to beat it, but when the cards handed to us are this broken, like with Sableye, like at this point with almost 10 years
Yeah.
of cards, TPCI has literally handed you the Infinity Stones and said, do it. Like, just do it.
Yeah.
And like at this point, it's like, why try to beat it when you can just play it?
Yeah.
Tony Stark died because he didn't wield the stones, bro. He was trying to beat the guy with the stones. And he is dead now.
Spoiler alert.
He still won though. It's fine.
Alex, so you said something a little earlier that resonated with me. So you're a very accomplished player. You've top 8'd, top 16, top 32, worlds invites, everything. And you said you don't think you'll be playing Zoro Control yourself. Or you actually said you won't be playing Zoro Control yourself. I want to ask obviously I'm not going to ask you what you're playing because I don't even expect you to know yet. We're still over a week out. But a player like yourself that you know that you're a skilled player and you've played complicated decks before, what is the lack of appeal with the control decks? Is it the mirror? Is it the fatigue? Is it not knowing the correct 60?
It's honestly, for me, it's just like I don't enjoy playing that mirror, especially, and I fully acknowledge that in the 9 days I have right now, I'm not going to get good enough to win against the best players in the mirror match. So it's not worth me taking a deck that I know I can't win the event with.
Okay, yeah, that's really good. Christian, what is driving you to play Zora Control as of now?
Just being able to punish a lot of people based on their play, and it feels really good to just like know that you're in control of what you're doing and that you are responsible if you win or lose, other than when you get cross divide bricked. But Yeah, it just being able to like know what you're doing and just go through the motions. It feels very good.
Cool. And Kieran, you're kind of the in between. It sounds like your top two picks, or two of your top picks, are the Mewtwo with Guardy and Distortion Doors, and then you also said you put a lot of time into Sableye Garbodor. Um, so, is it completely based on matchup spreads? Is it how you're feeling the night before? Is it what the article sites are posting about the week leading up? What's going to make you choose between the two, do you think?
I mean, I really don't like factor in article sites anymore because at this like honestly at this point I'm of the mindset I use six prizes. I do read six prizes and I really value the information that I get there. But I think the vast majority of article websites are really just spinning the wheel. They're pumping out the decks that they want to be popular, and that's just been more apparent than ever anymore. So like that's definitely not a factor for me, like in the slightest. Honestly, it's just like I think Sableye is the. I think if someone plays Sableye perfectly, it's the best possible pick. Um, and also, I'm not going to Richmond for what it's worth. I'm going to Portland. And so like I have a little bit more time to keep working with the deck, but I also value that like as far as kind of more aggro, like more sort of take prizes kind of decks go, that Mewtwo kind of sits in that kind of medium of being like a control deck in some aspects as well, but also just the fact that like that Lost Boomerang, Absol, Giratina, Giovanni's combo can just like beat both Zoro Control and Sable out of the gate. Sometimes you also don't even need to do the stupid like Absol Giovanni's things. You can literally just do like the distortion door into Lost Boomerang. So I think both I definitely valued the sheer amount of options that both decks provide. I guess once I get to Portland, it's just gonna be a matter of which deck do I feel more capable of taking advantage of all those options properly.
Cool, awesome. Are there any rogue decks, any techs, anything you think is going to show up, or just any decks maybe I personally forgot to bring up? Kieran,
I think Night March will be there.
Night March.
There's always some dude playing Night March, man.
Will
Night
it?
March will be there. I know for a fact Rahul's trying to keep bees low key, but it's gonna, you know, bees is coming out at some point. Someone's gonna play some bees. Because if like Rahul doesn't play it, I guarantee you he told like 30 people it was busted because Rahul always tells people bees is busted.
Word.
So, I think both of those decks will never be completely gone. I think Guardian will exist. I think Guardian sucks. And I also think people will play like Welder decks because they're like, ooh, Welder's good. But I think Welder's insane and expanded. There are actually more broken supporters there.
Yeah. There is a crossover from standard to expanded. I remember maybe about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, 2 years ago for the Virginia regionals, if it was Roanoke or Richmond, a lot of people played Buzzrock because like Buzzrock was in standard and they already had the deck builder, they already had the cards for it, so they just kind of transferred over. So maybe we see that happen with Welder decks.
I think for what it's worth. I don't think there's any reason you should play a Welder deck unless you wanted to be like insanely fancy with Welder somehow taking the place of Blacksmith and Bees, but that seems bad unless the whole like deck was dedicated to doing something like that. Like that seems like a 4am kind of deck for me that I would like make and then like be ashamed that I've made and then delete it because other people use my PTC Geo account and I don't want them to think that I'm that bad.
Yeah, I definitely don't think Welder decks are a good choice, but possibly
Yeah.
more casual players or people that didn't know they were even going to the tournament, so they just changed a few cards in a standard deck. I'm just saying it's something you could definitely see round one, and I wouldn't be surprised to hear that people saw it round one. Christian, anything we didn't mention?
Not really. I mean, maybe my round one opponent flips over an Inkay, but like, I don't. I don't know. I've been doing some testing with like some weird stuff. Like I don't know. Behemoth's been pretty strong for me. You got 4 Wods. You got red cards. You got Let Loose. It's kind of strong.
Kind of
Item lock
quirky.
turn 2.
Yeah, I made a joke. Katron came into my Twitch chat the other night, and I made a joke about expanded Malamar, and just as I said that, my opponent flipped over a Dawn Wings on the expanded ladder. And Katron said, expanded Malamar is pretty good, but it's not the play. So you heard it from Katron himself. Alex, do we leave anything out?
Can I say Groudon?
Primal Groudon?
With the bit spoon.
It's actually very decent. Like, if you think about it, Dark Box is a very good matchup. Zoro Control, you say Bent Spoon, they say what? Sableye, you say Bent Spoon, they say what? Yeah, I mean, like, with Cassius, you can reset your field to the point where they can't Goose Stall you.
Wait, why does Bent Spoon affect the Zoro Control and the
They can't Articuno.
Opal Crush.
Oh, okay.
And they can't field blower it.
Right,
Or
because of
anything.
the Omega trait, right? Or the Alpha trait, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Delta trait, one of those Greek letters. Okay, that's interesting. Is that something that is actually that you think is actually a choice for people, or do you think it's just like a deck that you used to like, so
Okay, well,
you gave it thought?
Groudon is never a choice for people because beaches. Like,
Okay.
let's be real.
It's
The
a choice for
majority
like 5 people.
of- Exactly. I think if you really want to beat Control, Groudon is a very good choice. Past that, I'm not playing it. Like, it's not worth it. But like, I think you could sneak your way into day 2 with it.
Interesting. That's a really hot take. That's a good one. That's a good one. Okay. So let's wrap this baby up. Give me the 5 archetypes you think will be the most popular. And if that's too hard, you can give me less or a little less or a little more if that makes it easier. Like if you have some ties on number 5. And then we'll also do what you think, what decks you think will show up in top 8. However many archetypes you think are in top 8, doesn't have to be a certain number. We'll go Christian first. So your most popular decks for Richmond, and then your decks most likely to make top 8.
I think Turbo Dark Archies are the 2 best. They're going to be the most popular aggressive decks. You're going to have probably a lot of Mew Guardy because people still seem to be on that deck for whatever reason. And then both of the control decks are going to be pretty popular.
Okay, cool. Alex?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with those 5, but I'm gonna throw Mew Plume in with Mew Guardy as the same archetype because it's Mew Box.
Okay.
To me, it's all the same.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah, but other than that, like I have to agree with those. And then top 8, I think you're gonna have at least 4 control decks, 1 aggro deck, and then 3 flex spots.
Okay. Christian, did you give your top 8? I'm sorry, I got a message when
no,
you were
I
talking.
didn't.
Okay.
I think it's gonna be like 6 control decks and Archies and then whatever.
Okay. Kieran, same questions. Your popular decks and your top and the things that you think will make top 8.
Popular decks undoubtedly Turbo Dark, Archie-Stoice, Mew Plume. I think people will play like bad like Mew Guardy lists and kind of lump that in, but I don't think I'd really like the Mew Guardy list, but I wouldn't call Mew Box. And then I'd say probably like Zoro Garb. And then I think of the 2 control decks, Zoro Control will probably be more played. I think Sableye is a little bit more intimidating, in terms of like playing it without and like being confident in it. So I'd say probably Zoro Control over that.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of top 8, I think if someone plays Sableye Garbodor well, definitely there's a Sableye Garbodor in top 8. Because the thing about that is realistically, like, for as many, like, if all the DDG guys play it and play it perfectly, like, it's just a matter of whether they make misplays or, like, whether they get super unlucky and, in a few choice circumstances throughout the tournament. Because for the most part, that deck isn't really, like, luck doesn't influence that deck as much as it can influence some other games. But, like, it could be possible that there could be 4 Sableyes in top 8. Like, that's kind of the nature of the deck. It depends on how many people play it. I think there'll for sure be like 2 to 3 mix of Archies and Turbo Dark, just people whose deck made top 8 a little bit more than they did. And I think like if someone plays Groudon, I did mean to mention Groudon. I think Groudon is actually kind of good. It's kind of, it can be the control deck to beat the control decks in some kind of funny ways. And you know, like it can. The only thing that really scares me playing Groudon would probably be like Archie-Stoice, I feel like. So I could see a Groudon making it through. You know, I think Joe Sanchez will be in Portland, so chances are there's one Groudon in top 8, and it's Joe Sanchez. Zoro Control, Zoro Garb. I think any of the things we mentioned could realistically make top 8, but I think, you know, the control decks will make top 8 based on who plays them, and the like aggro decks will make top 8 a little bit more based on how played they are and what matchups they hit.
Cool. Yeah, sounds good. All right, well, thank you guys for coming on the discussion, and Alex, you were a very late addition. You joined in 2 minutes before we started recording, so thanks for coming in. And yeah, go ahead and say your shout outs, mention your testing partners or sponsors or whoever you want to shout out. Go ahead, Alex.
Sure. Shout out to my sponsor, Nerd Rage Gaming. Shout out to Six Prizes. I maybe have a free article dropping sometime this week if I ever finish it.
Groudon?
Oh heck no, it's not even. It's not meta related. I'll have another article sometime before Richmond, I think. And yeah, shout out to Katron for testing.
Oh, Christian, go ahead.
Shout out Brett Burns. That's it.
And Kieran?
Shout outs to the Pokestats TCG gang, Nick Robinson, my primary testing partner, Wood gang, for sure, and the DU gang, Rush DU, everybody. I think that's it.
All right, awesome. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Be sure to check out flipsidegaming.com and use code CELIO for 10% off of your next order, $10 or more. Subscribe, comment, and like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time here on Celio's Network.